Black teen help disabled woman, has no idea who he's approaching. The city was alive with the usual hum of activity, cars honking, shopkeepers calling out to passers-by, and the chatter of people going about their daily lives. Despite the noise, Jamal always found a quiet sense of observation in the midst of the chaos. He liked to notice the small things, the details that others often overlooked, the way the sunlight caught on the windows of an old bookstore, or the rhythmic tapping of a musician's drum on the sidewalk. As he rounded the corner near the community center, Jamal noticed movement ahead that made him pause. A woman in a wheelchair was slowly making her way along the narrow sidewalk, her face marked by concentration and slight frustration. She was clearly struggling to maneuver around a group of teenagers laughing and pushing each other past her. Her hands gripped the wheels tightly, but she seemed unsure if she could make it safely through the crowd. Jamal's heart went out to her immediately. Without a second thought, he stepped closer. "Excuse me, ma'am, do you need some help?" he asked, his voice calm but filled with sincerity. The woman looked up, her eyes meeting his. There was a hint of surprise in her gaze, as though she wasn't expecting anyone to offer help. She opened her mouth to speak, hesitated, and then nodded slightly. Jamal smiled gently and reached out his arm. "I can guide you through. Don't worry, you'll be safe." The crowd of teenagers continued past without noticing, and Jamal guided her carefully, keeping a steady pace so she could feel comfortable and in control. He could see that she had a kind but weary expression, and he imagined she might have had a long day. Her wheelchair was old, with worn handles and slightly squeaky wheels, yet she maneuvered it with quiet dignity. Jamal felt a mix of admiration and determination. He wanted to make this small act of kindness count. As they moved along, Jamal realized the sidewalk was narrower than he thought, cluttered with parked bicycles, a stray shopping cart, and a street vendor's small table displaying colorful trinkets. He paused to make sure the woman had room to pass. "Careful here," he said, gently tilting the wheelchair to avoid a low-lying branch. "Almost there." She smiled faintly, a gesture that warmed Jamal's heart. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice polite and gentle. Jamal could tell she wasn't used to people offering help so freely, or perhaps she simply appreciated the kindness in a world that often seemed rushed and uncaring. As they continued, Jamal tried to make conversation to keep the moment light. "It's a really nice day, isn't it?" "Not too hot, not too cold," the woman chuckled softly. "Yes, it is," she replied. "Perfect for walking if you were walking." Jamal smiled at her humor. "I guess walking has its own advantages," he said. "But I think pushing a wheelchair is its own kind of challenge." She laughed again, this time a bit more openly, and Jamal noticed a flicker of warmth in her eyes. It felt good to see her relaxed, even for a little while. As they approached a busy crosswalk, Jamal made sure to wait for the signal, standing slightly in front of her to ensure she could safely roll onto the street. Cars slowed and stopped as they waited, the drivers giving the pair a polite, fleeting glance. Some smiled, some didn't notice, but Jamal didn't mind. He was focused on her safety. While waiting, he glanced down at the woman more closely. She seemed older, perhaps in her 70s, though she carried herself with a quiet strength. Her hair was neatly pinned back, and she wore a simple dress with a cardigan. Her hands, though delicate, were steady as she rested them on the wheelchair's wheels. Jamal imagined how long it must have taken her to manage life independently, and he felt a deeper respect for her courage and resilience. Once the light turned green, Jamal carefully guided her across the street. They reached the other side safely, and he could see a small grocery store just ahead. "Do you need anything from here?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, thank you, I only need to get home," she replied. Jamal nodded. "All right, I'll help you with that." He began to push her at a steady pace, keeping a conversation going to ease the silence. "Do you live around here?" he asked casually. "Yes," she replied. "Just a few blocks ahead. Thank you for helping me." Jamal smiled. "No problem at all." "It's nothing, really. I like helping people." As they moved along, Jamal noticed the small details of her home environment, the faded brick walls, the neatly kept gardens, and the familiar hum of a neighborhood alive with children playing and neighbors talking. He realized how important these small things were to the woman's daily life and felt a quiet admiration for her independence. Along the way, a couple of people walked past, some nodding in acknowledgement, others too busy to notice. Jamal ignored the onlookers, focused entirely on the woman in front of him. He could feel a sense of purpose in this simple act of kindness, something that made the day feel a little brighter and more meaningful. When they finally reached her building, Jamal paused to make sure the entrance was clear. The ramp was slightly steep, but he adjusted the wheelchair carefully, guiding her with gentle precision. "Almost there," he said encouragingly. She smiled, a mix of relief and gratitude in her eyes. Once inside, Jamal helped her settle comfortably in her living room, placing her bag and belongings nearby. She looked around, and her eyes softened with appreciation. "Thank you, young man." "You didn't have to do all of this," she said, her voice warm. Jamal shook his head. "It was no trouble at all. I'm glad I could help. I know it can be hard sometimes." She nodded thoughtfully. "You have a good heart. Not many people stop to help these days." Jamal felt a swell of pride, but also humility. He didn't expect recognition or thanks. He simply wanted to make a positive difference in someone's life, no matter how small. As Jamal prepared to leave, the woman reached out her hand. "You've done more than just help me today. You reminded me that kindness still exists." Jamal smiled, shaking her hand gently. "I'm happy I could do that." He stepped out into the sunlight again, feeling lighter than before. Something about this encounter had touched him in a way he couldn't quite describe. It wasn't just about helping someone. It was about connecting, seeing the humanity in another person, and taking the time to make their day a little better. As he walked home, Jamal replayed the moments in his mind. The smile she had given, the laugh they shared, the quiet gratitude in her eyes. It was a simple encounter, but it left a lasting impression on him. He realized that life often presents small opportunities to make a difference, and even a brief act of kindness could ripple far beyond the moment. By the time he reached his street, Jamal's thoughts were filled with reflection and a sense of quiet fulfillment. He didn't know who the woman truly was or what her life had been like, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that he had helped someone in need, and in doing so, he had learned something important about empathy, patience, and the value of reaching out to others. He took a deep breath of the evening air, feeling the gentle breeze on his face, and smiled. The city around him continued its busy rhythm, but Jamal felt a little more connected, a little more aware of the people who shared his streets and neighborhoods. And for the first time that day, he felt that small but profound sense of joy that comes from doing something good, purely for the sake of goodness itself. After Jamal left Mrs. Carter's home that afternoon, the walk back to his own house felt unusually quiet. The streets were busy with the familiar city hum, yet Jamal's mind replayed the encounter over and over. He kept thinking about her calm and composed demeanor, the quiet strength in her eyes, and the way she had smiled at him after he helped her into her home. It wasn't just a simple thank you. It felt like she had genuinely appreciated his presence, his kindness. As he turned down his own street, Jamal couldn't help but feel a mix of curiosity and admiration. Who was this woman, really? Why did she seem so calm and dignified, even though she clearly struggled with daily life in a wheelchair? He tried to imagine what it might be like to face challenges like hers, to live independently while managing so much at once. The thought made him feel thankful for the small conveniences in his own life, and at the same time, inspired by her courage. Jamal arrived home and dropped his backpack by the door, his mind still buzzing with thoughts. His younger sister, Tia, noticed his unusual quietness as she sat at the kitchen table doing her homework. "You look deep in thought," she said, glancing up with a curious smile. "Just thinking," Jamal replied, shrugging lightly. He didn't want to go into the details, but a part of him wanted to share the story. "I helped someone today, an older lady in a wheelchair. She seemed really kind and strong." Tia looked up, eyes wide. "That's really nice of you. Did she say anything interesting?" Jamal smiled faintly. "She did, actually. She said not many people stop to help these days. It made me think about how small acts of kindness really do matter." Tia nodded, impressed. "You're like a superhero," she teased, making him laugh. It was a small, happy moment, but Jamal felt the warmth of it lingering. The next day at school, Jamal couldn't stop thinking about Mrs. Carter. He went through his usual routine, classes, lunch with friends, and after-school practice, but a part of his mind kept drifting back to her. He realized that he wanted to do more than just help her once. He wanted to know her story, learn from her experience, and maybe even make her life a little easier whenever possible. After school, Jamal found himself walking in the same direction as the previous day, hoping he might see her again. The neighborhood seemed different now, slightly quieter, more familiar, as if he had noticed details he hadn't before. The trees lining the sidewalks cast soft shadows in the late afternoon sun, and the sounds of children playing and neighbors chatting felt comforting. Soon enough, Jamal spotted her again just outside her building, struggling a little with her wheelchair. He quickened his pace and called out, "Hi, Mrs. Carter, need some help?" She looked up and smiled warmly. "Hello, Jamal, that would be very kind of you." As he approached, he noticed her smile had a subtle warmth that seemed to light up the space around her. He helped her maneuver the wheelchair down the small ramp, careful not to let the wheels slip. "How has your day been?" he asked gently. "Oh, she replied, chuckling softly. "A bit tiring, but I'm managing. It's nice to see a familiar face, though. You brighten the day, young man." Jamal felt a flush of pride, but quickly pushed it aside. It wasn't about recognition, it was about helping. They moved slowly through the streets together, Jamal keeping a steady pace and talking lightly to ease any tension. "Do you like living around here?" he asked, genuinely curious. "I do," she replied thoughtfully. "It's peaceful in its own way. I have neighbors who care, a community that helps when it can, and the little joys of each day to keep me going." Her words made Jamal pause for a moment. He realized that despite the challenges she faced, Mrs. Carter had learned to find happiness and contentment in her surroundings. As they walked, she shared small stories of her daily life, the morning walks she liked to take, the friends she met at the local community center, and how she enjoyed small moments like watching the sunset from her window. Jamal listened intently, fascinated by the calm and resilience in her voice. He realized that her life was a collection of small victories, moments of joy that she held onto despite difficulties. When they reached a small park along the way, Mrs. Carter paused to rest, adjusting the wheelchair and taking a deep breath. Jamal sat on a nearby bench, watching the children playing and the birds flitting between the trees. She said softly, "it's important to notice the little things in life. Even small joys can make a difference, especially when things are hard." Jamal nodded. "I think I understand. Like helping you today, even though it seems small, it made both of us feel better." She smiled warmly. "Exactly. Small gestures can have big effects, sometimes in ways we don't even realize." Her words stayed with Jamal as they continued their journey. He felt a new sense of responsibility, a desire to look for ways to make a positive impact in the lives of others whenever possible. As they approached her home once more, Jamal noticed a small garden next to the entrance. The flowers were blooming beautifully, despite the modest care they received. Mrs. Carter noticed his gaze and said softly, "I take care of them when I can. It's a small joy, but it reminds me that life can still be beautiful no matter the circumstances." Jamal smiled, appreciating her perspective. "It really is beautiful," he said. "Just like your garden, even small things matter." Once they reached her doorstep, he helped her inside, carrying a few small bags and making sure she was settled comfortably. She thanked him again, her voice filled with genuine warmth. "You have a kind heart, Jamal. I hope you continue to help others. It makes a world of difference." Jamal felt a deep sense of satisfaction. "I will. Helping you today reminded me that even little things matter. I'll keep that in mind." After he left her home and began walking back toward his own street, Jamal couldn't stop thinking about her words and the way she had lived her life with dignity and grace. He realized that kindness wasn't just about helping someone physically. It was also about empathy, understanding, and making someone feel seen and valued. Over the next few days, Jamal found himself visiting Mrs. Carter regularly after school. Each visit became a small routine. He would help her with errands, push her wheelchair through the neighborhood, or simply sit and talk with her about life. She shared stories from her past, her career, her travels, and the people who had shaped her life. Jamal listened with fascination, learning not just about her, but about patience, perseverance, and the quiet strength it takes to live independently. One afternoon, as they sat on her porch enjoying the warm breeze, Mrs. Carter looked at him thoughtfully. "Jamal," she said gently, "you have a gift for kindness. Not everyone has it. You see the needs of others and you act without hesitation. That's rare in this world." Jamal felt a mix of pride and humility. "I'm just trying to do what's right," he replied softly. "It feels good to help, though, and I've learned a lot from you, too." She smiled, a twinkle in her eye. "And that, my dear, is the most important part. We learn from each other, and in the process, the world becomes a little better." Jamal realized she was right. These encounters were about more than just assistance. They were about connection, understanding, and the small ways people can positively impact one another. Each visit reminded him that kindness and compassion were not just acts. They were lessons, shaping both the giver and the receiver. Days turned into weeks, and Jamal's visits became more frequent. He noticed subtle improvements in Mrs. Carter's life. She smiled more easily, seemed less fatigued, and often expressed joy at seeing him. Their bond grew stronger, built on trust, respect, and the shared understanding that small gestures could create lasting ripples. Through these visits, Jamal also became more aware of his community. He noticed neighbors helping each other, small acts of generosity, and the quiet ways people supported one another. He began to appreciate the interconnectedness of life, realizing that even small contributions, like pushing a wheelchair, sharing a kind word, or simply listening, could make a meaningful difference. One rainy afternoon, as they navigated the wet streets together, Mrs. Carter paused to look at him. "Jamal," she said, her voice steady despite the drizzle, "you've reminded me of the goodness in people. You've given me more than help, you've given me hope." Jamal felt a warmth spread through him. "I'm glad I could," he said simply. "You've taught me so much, too, about courage, patience, and seeing the good in life." She nodded, her eyes misty but smiling. "And that, my dear boy, is why kindness matters. It's a circle. One act leads to another, and the world slowly becomes brighter, one person at a time." As Jamal walked home that day, soaked but happy, he reflected on how much he had grown since meeting Mrs. Carter. He understood now that life was full of challenges, but small, thoughtful acts could create meaning, connection, and even joy. He realized that everyone has the power to make a difference, and that even seemingly ordinary moments, like helping a neighbor, could transform lives in ways unimaginable. He knew this was only the beginning. There were countless people in the world who could benefit from a little kindness, and Jamal felt ready to continue spreading it, inspired by Mrs. Carter's quiet strength and the bond they had formed. Days passed, and Jamal's visits to Mrs. Carter became a routine he looked forward to. Each afternoon, he would finish his homework, grab a quick snack, and set out toward her home, eager to see her and offer his help. The bond between them had grown quietly, naturally. He had come to appreciate her wisdom, patience, and gentle humor, while she seemed to find comfort and energy in his youthful presence. One sunny afternoon, Jamal arrived to find Mrs. Carter sitting on her porch, adjusting the small cushions on her wheelchair. Her expression was calm, but there was a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "Good afternoon, Jamal," she said warmly. "I have something I'd like to show you today. Are you ready?" Jamal's interest was immediately piqued. "Sure, Mrs. Carter." "What is it?" he asked, helping her carefully into her wheelchair and guiding her down the ramp. As they moved through the neighborhood, she explained, "I thought today we could take a little walk through some of the streets I've known for years. There are a few places I want you to see, places that are part of my story." Jamal nodded, curious and eager to learn more. He had already sensed there was much more to her life than he knew, and his mind buzzed with possibilities. They passed by familiar shops, small cafes, and quiet houses. The streets felt alive with memories, and Mrs. Carter began to share pieces of her past. "This neighborhood has changed a lot over the years," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of pride and nostalgia. "I've seen families grow up, businesses come and go, and people supporting one another through thick and thin." Jamal listened intently, fascinated by her recollections. She spoke of community events she had organized, fundraisers she had led, and the ways she had quietly helped countless people in the area. With every story, Jamal realized that her life had been much bigger than he had imagined. She wasn't just a neighbor needing help. She had been a guiding force in the lives of many, shaping the community in ways few had noticed. As they turned a corner, they arrived at a small park with a modest stone plaque near the entrance. Jamal stopped, curious, and looked at the inscription. His eyes widened as he read the words, "In honor of Evelyn Carter for her years of dedication and service to the community." Mrs. Carter noticed his reaction and smiled gently. "I suppose it's time I told you," she said. "Jamal, I've spent much of my life helping others, mostly quietly. I worked with schools, charities, and local organizations to make life better for those in need. I never sought recognition. It was never about that. But this park and a few other small acknowledgments around the city are reminders that even quiet acts can leave a lasting impact." Jamal was stunned. Wait, you mean you're the Mrs. Evelyn Carter? His voice was filled with amazement. He had no idea that the woman he had been helping all this time was a well-known community leader and philanthropist. I, I had no idea, Mrs. Carter chuckled softly, a twinkle in her eyes. Most people don't notice. I prefer to live quietly, help where I can, and let the work speak for itself. You didn't need to know who I am to help me, and that's what matters most. Jamal felt a wave of humility wash over him. All this time, he had been helping her out of kindness, with no thought of recognition or reward. And now, the revelation that she had been a major influence in the community made his small acts of assistance feel even more meaningful. He realized that even the simplest gestures, pushing a wheelchair, sharing a smile, offering conversation, could touch the lives of someone extraordinary. As they continued walking, Mrs. Carter began to share more stories from her past. She spoke of organizing food drives for families in need, mentoring young students, and advocating for accessibility in public spaces. She told Jamal about challenges she had faced, obstacles that had seemed insurmountable at the time, and how perseverance, patience, and faith in people had guided her through. Jamal was captivated. I always believed that change starts with small steps, she said. You may think that one person cannot make a difference, but even small actions can grow into something bigger. Sometimes, it's the unnoticed work that has the most impact. Jamal nodded, deeply inspired. He realized that her words applied to his own life as well. It wasn't about fame or acknowledgement. It was about helping others, building connections, and living with integrity. As they approached a small community center, Mrs. Carter paused and looked at Jamal. This was one of my favorite projects, she said. I worked with volunteers to create a safe space for children and teens after school. It was a place for learning, for growth, and for hope. I wanted every young person to have a chance to succeed, regardless of their circumstances. Jamal's admiration grew. He had seen her as a kind, elderly neighbor, but now he understood the depth of her influence. She had quietly shaped the lives of so many people, yet she lived modestly without expecting recognition. It was a lesson in humility, kindness, and dedication that Jamal would never forget. They entered the community center briefly, where Jamal saw photographs of Mrs. Carter with children, volunteers, and local officials. He recognized some of the faces from school, neighbors, and the city's events. Seeing the impact she had made in such tangible ways moved him profoundly. Jamal, she said softly, noticing his awe, you don't need grand gestures to make a difference. Every kind act counts. Even helping me, guiding me safely, spending time with me, has meaning. It reminds me that there are still young people who care, who are willing to give without expecting anything in return. Jamal felt a surge of pride and determination. He realized that while he had been learning from her, she had been teaching him in return. Her life was a living example of how one person's dedication and compassion could ripple through an entire community. As they left the community center and continued their walk, they passed by several local shops where residents greeted Mrs. Carter warmly. Some waved, others called out, "Good afternoon, Evelyn." Jamal noticed that she was respected, admired, and loved by many, though she carried herself with quiet grace. He was struck by how much influence one person could have through kindness, consistency, and a genuine desire to help others. Along the way, Mrs. Carter shared even more personal stories of mentors who had guided her in her youth, challenges she had overcome as a woman in leadership, and moments of doubt she had faced. Through each story, Jamal saw her not just as a public figure, but as a human being with struggles, resilience, and a commitment to doing good despite difficulties. They stopped near a small fountain in a quiet square, where Mrs. Carter rested and gestured for Jamal to sit beside her. "Do you see," she said, looking around at the small park, the shops, and the people passing by, "how even the simplest things matter? A safe sidewalk, a welcoming community, a place to learn, these are the things that change lives." Jamal nodded, feeling inspired and reflective. "I understand now," he said softly. "It's not about recognition or fame. It's about helping where you can every day and trusting that it makes a difference even if it's small." Mrs. Carter smiled, a warm, gentle expression. "Exactly, Jamal, and you are learning that now. One day you'll see the effects of your actions, even if you never know all the ways you've helped others." As the sun began to set, painting the streets in a soft orange glow, Jamal and Mrs. Carter made their way back to her home. Jamal's mind was buzzing with thoughts and emotions, admiration, inspiration, and a deep sense of responsibility. He realized that his small acts of kindness had brought him not just personal satisfaction, but also connection, learning, and a glimpse into a life that had quietly shaped a community. Once inside, Mrs. Carter thanked him once again. "You've reminded me of the value of everyday kindness," she said. "I've spent my life helping others, but you've shown me that the future of our community is in good hands with young people like you." Jamal felt a swell of pride, but more importantly, he felt inspired to continue making a difference. He knew that while Mrs. Carter had quietly shaped the lives of countless people, there was still so much he could do in his own life to help, support, and care for those around him. As he walked home that evening, the city around him seemed brighter, fuller of possibility. He thought about the stories Mrs. Carter had shared, the lives she had touched, and the quiet power of consistent kindness. He understood now that even a small act, a guiding hand, a smile, a moment of attention, could have effects far beyond what anyone could imagine. Jamal realized that he had been given a rare gift, the chance to learn directly from someone whose life was a testament to compassion, dedication, and humility. And he knew that this lesson would stay with him forever, shaping not only how he acted, but how he saw the world and the people in it. After learning the full story of Mrs. Carter's life and her quiet contributions to the community, Jamal felt a new sense of purpose. The revelation of her identity had not changed the way he wanted to help her. It had only strengthened his desire to make a difference in the lives of those around him. That evening, as he walked home through the familiar streets of his neighborhood, he reflected on everything he had learned. He realized that kindness was more than a one-time gesture. It was a habit, a way of living, and a conscious choice to pay attention to the people around him. Every smile, every act of assistance, every small effort to make someone's day better could ripple outward in ways that were impossible to predict. Jamal felt inspired to carry this lesson into every part of his life, from school to home, to friendships, and even casual encounters on the street. The next day, he arrived at Mrs. Carter's home earlier than usual, eager to see her. She was sitting near her window, looking out at the neighborhood as the sunlight filtered in. "Good afternoon, Jamal," she said warmly. "You're early today." "I wanted to help you with a few things," Jamal replied, smiling. "Maybe we can organize some of your things, or I could push you around a little. I just want to be useful." Mrs. Carter chuckled softly, a gentle warmth in her eyes. "That's very kind of you, Jamal, but what you've been doing already is more than enough. Your presence, your conversation, your willingness to help, those are gifts that can't be measured." Jamal blushed slightly. "I just like helping, that's all, and I like spending time with you. You've taught me a lot." "I'm glad," she said, her voice soft and sincere. "It's not just me teaching. You've reminded me of the joy in seeing the next generation care for others. It's a two-way street." They spent the afternoon together, Jamal assisting her with small tasks around the house. He helped her bring in groceries, organized some old books and papers she had accumulated over the years, and even rearranged a few shelves to make things easier for her to reach. She offered guidance, telling him the stories behind certain items, a photograph here, a medal there, a letter from a friend long gone. Each story was a window into her past, and Jamal listened with growing admiration and respect. During a break, they sat together on her porch, watching the neighborhood life unfold. Children played in the streets, neighbors waved to one another, and the soft hum of distant traffic filled the air. Jamal felt a sense of calm and belonging that he hadn't noticed before. Mrs. Carter looked at him and smiled. "You know, Jamal, small efforts like yours are what keep communities strong. You don't have to lead an entire city to make a difference. One act of kindness is enough to inspire others to do the same." Jamal nodded thoughtfully. "I think I understand now. Helping people isn't about recognition or reward. It's about making life a little better for someone else, even if it's just for a moment." "Exactly," she said, "and that is how change begins. It starts with one person, one gesture, and it grows from there." As the days turned into weeks, Jamal began to notice the subtle ways in which his actions were creating a positive effect. Other teenagers in the neighborhood, who had once ignored elderly neighbors or passed by without notice, began to offer help when they saw him assisting Mrs. Carter. Parents with young children smiled at him as he guided her wheelchair along sidewalks, and a few neighbors even stopped to ask if she needed groceries or help around the house. It was as if his small acts of kindness had sparked a chain reaction. Jamal felt proud not because of the recognition, but because he saw the power of example. One person's willingness to care could influence others, creating ripples that spread quietly through the community. He realized that Mrs. Carter had done the same in her lifetime, quietly shaping countless lives with her dedication, patience, and generosity. One afternoon, as they took a slow walk through a nearby park, Mrs. Carter paused near a small garden she had once helped create. "I love seeing the flowers bloom," she said softly. "It reminds me that growth takes time, care, and attention, just like people, just like communities." Jamal smiled, understanding her metaphor. "It makes sense," he said. "You've spent your life helping people grow in small ways and big ways, and now I'm learning how to do that too." She looked at him, her eyes warm and proud. "And that, Jamal, is the real reward. When someone learns from your actions and continues the work, the world becomes brighter. You're carrying the torch forward in your own way." As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange, Jamal and Mrs. Carter returned to her home. Inside, they shared a quiet dinner together, simple and comforting. Jamal had brought a small basket of fresh fruit from a nearby market, something he thought she might enjoy. She thanked him graciously, and they talked about everyday things, the weather, neighborhood happenings, and small memories that brought smiles to their faces. Later that evening, Jamal sat in her living room, reflecting on all he had experienced over the past weeks. He thought about the strength, courage, and dedication of Mrs. Carter, and how much he had learned from her example. He also thought about the moments of laughter, the quiet conversations, and the shared appreciation for life's simple joys. He realized that the impact of their connection went beyond helping or being helped. It was about understanding, empathy, and mutual respect. It was about learning from each other and recognizing the value in even the smallest gestures. Jamal felt a sense of gratitude for the opportunity to know her, and he understood that these lessons would stay with him for the rest of his life. In the following days, Jamal began to think about how he could expand his own efforts to help others in the community. He organized a small neighborhood cleanup with a few friends, encouraged classmates to volunteer at local events, and even helped elderly neighbors with errands. Each effort was small, but each had a ripple effect, creating a sense of togetherness and shared responsibility. One afternoon, as Jamal returned from helping Mrs. Carter bring in groceries, he noticed a group of children playing in the street nearby. They were laughing and running, but one little boy tripped over a curb. Jamal rushed over, helped him up, and gently reminded him to be careful. The boy smiled and waved, and Jamal realized that even these brief moments of care mattered. Each act, no matter how small, had the potential to shape the day or even the life of someone else. Jamal continued to visit Mrs. Carter regularly, their conversations growing deeper and richer over time. They spoke about dreams, fears, and the small victories that gave life meaning. Mrs. Carter shared stories of hope, resilience, and the quiet triumphs that often go unnoticed. Jamal absorbed every word, understanding that life's most profound lessons often came from ordinary moments and simple human connections. One rainy afternoon, they sat by her window, watching the raindrops streak down the glass. Jamal held an umbrella for her as they ventured outside briefly, and she smiled. "You know, Jamal," she said softly, "kindness is like this rain. It nourishes quietly, steadily, and often without notice. But in time, it brings growth, beauty, and life to places that might have seemed barren." Jamal nodded, deeply moved by her words. "I think I understand now. Every little thing we do to help someone matters, even if it's just a small gesture." "Exactly," she replied. "And you are living that truth, Jamal. You've shown that age, background, or status doesn't define one's ability to make a difference. What matters is the heart and the willingness to act." As the weeks turned into months, Jamal's life was enriched not just by the lessons he learned from Mrs. Carter, but also by the connections he built with others in the community. People began to notice his dedication, and his actions inspired classmates, friends, and neighbors to look for ways to help as well. Jamal realized that kindness could grow like a wave, reaching far beyond the initial act, touching lives in ways he might never fully see. One sunny evening, Jamal and Mrs. Carter sat together on her porch, watching the world go by. She looked at him with a gentle smile. "Jamal, you've done more than help me," she said. "You've reminded me that there is still hope in the younger generation. You've shown me that the work of kindness, no matter how quiet or small, continues in capable hands." Jamal felt a warm sense of pride, not for himself, but for the connection they shared and the lessons he had learned. "I've learned so much from you," he said softly. "You've shown me how to live with purpose, patience, and compassion." Mrs. Carter reached out and patted his hand gently. "And you've reminded me that kindness is alive in the world. That is the greatest gift anyone could give me." As Jamal walked home that evening, the city lights twinkling in the distance, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He understood that the journey of helping others was ongoing, filled with small steps, quiet victories, and meaningful connections. And he knew that the lessons he had learned from Mrs. Carter would guide him for the rest of his life. From that day on, Jamal carried the spirit of kindness and compassion into everything he did. Whether helping a neighbor, guiding a friend, or simply offering a smile to someone in need, he remembered the quiet strength of Mrs. Carter and the profound impact of small, thoughtful acts. He realized that life was not measured by recognition or fame, but by the positive impact one had on others. And in that understanding, Jamal found a deep and lasting sense of purpose, a purpose that would shape not only his own life, but the lives of countless others in the years to come.